here's what we did this week. This week's a little different than what I've ever done. I shot a video, and we're going to play that video. The video is this. I want you to understand this. There is an enemy of God, and the enemy of God is after you and your family. You have to understand that. He hates you. He hates your kids. He is not for them. He is not for you. He wants to destroy you. He wants to destroy your kids and your family and your testimony. And he's coming after you with everything that he has. And he's using some different tools that maybe we feel like are innocent. Maybe we don't see everything that's coming our way. And so now with school going back, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted us to take some time and really just think and spend some time to where we just begin to think about what kids are going through, what they're facing. Because here's the thing. Times have changed than when you and I were in school. They've changed a lot. And so kids aren't facing the same things that you and I face. They're facing different things. But here's the thing, parents, grandparents. Just because you aren't educated in them does not give you the right to put your head in the sand. I think it's time that you and I, as parents, as grandparents, begin to get educated on things that your kids are using and seeing and going through so that we can protect them going forward. Because if we don't know, we can't protect them. And so some of you are just saying, I don't need to know these things. I don't want to know these things. Here, take it, just go. And some of you are afraid of the fight that's going to come if you do try to put up some boundaries, do try to put up some guidelines. And so I sat down with the resource officer at Sapulpa Public Schools. He's not there anymore. He was there since 2014, and it's Major Phil Dill. And so what I want us to do, y'all watch this, and then I'm going to get back up at the end. But y'all check this out. Hey guys, we're sitting here with Major Phil Dill. Phil is not anymore, but he was for the longest time the former Sapulpa Public Schools resource officer. And so he was on campus with the kids every single day, grew to love the kids and hang out with the kids. But through that process, in a conversation that we've had, he's talked to my wife and some other people. I just felt like, man, we as a church really need to hear and be aware of some of the things that he's seen that our kids are being exposed to that maybe we as parents don't even know. We as grandparents don't even know. And so I've asked Phil to come here and to sit down with us so that we can have a conversation and y'all can just kind of hear some of the things that he sees so that we as parents, our eyes can be a little more opened and we can understand what it is that our kids are going through, because we all understand what our kids are going through now is different than what we went through. And so for us to be effective parents, we have to realize what they're going through, and really we have to become educated in what they're going through so that we can help them walk through this new stage, new season, new culture in life and what they're dealing with. And so, man, Phil, grateful you're here. Thanks so much for coming, man. Appreciate you being here. Yeah. And so, man, we're just going to dive in. And so as you've spent time with the kids and seen so many different things and throughout the years, how have you seen over time, from your time that you spent there until now, how have you seen things change and things change quickly?
Well, I mean, there's been several issues that I could talk about. I mean, right off the bat, you know, with me coming in, I started as a school resource officer in 2014 after 13 years of being a patrol officer. And within that first year or two, we saw vapes come on the scene. You know, initially those weren't even illegal, and they were just widespread. And then eventually, you know, those became illegal for kids, and that's something that's still going on. Over the last couple of years, with the prevalence of marijuana and the mixed messages of, you know, society saying it's okay and some people saying it's not okay, and the presence and availability of that is vastly changed. So many people have it now legally at home, and kids have such easy access to it. That's been a real change in the last couple of years. And then the social media, you know, that was already a thing when I started. But as it's evolved, as we've seen, you know, new apps come into place, like, you know, Snapchat's a big one we can talk about. But seeing the direct effect that has on student life, on how kids interact with each other, on conflicts that are created, things that administration has to deal with. That's been huge. And then cell phones themselves, the obvious addictive characteristics and things that cell phones have, and how that has changed kids' behavior, has been something that's really interesting to see, but also very concerning as a parent, and as a police officer.
I remember in high school it was beepers, and then the worst thing we had on the phone was Snake.
Yeah.
And playing Snake
Yeah.
the whole time.
For sure.
And so now it's just completely changed to where literally everything and anything is at the tip of your student, those students at school, right at the tip of their fingers. That they can access anything. And so, kind of through this time and everything, what would you say are some of the things that you've seen on a phone that may surprise parents to even know that it was on their phone?
Well, I think the biggest, and I'm not sure directly answering that question, but I think the biggest thing that I've seen is the parents' sort of failure to recognize the danger of the phone in the first place. And so they hand a child this device that gives them instant access to all kinds of things, and they don't really do anything to monitor or secure that. And so you're basically at that point, you're counting on your 11, 12, 13, 17-year-olds' ability to resist temptation. That's your safeguard. And what's really concerning to me is if I had a nickel for every parent who said, "Oh, I know my kid, he wouldn't do that," or who defend their kid, and you're just looking at it going, well, of course they would. Like, they're kids. That's, and these are temptations that adults struggle with. And we're asking kids to resist it just because, we trust them or whatever. So that to me is probably the biggest thing, is just we have to recognize the threat that the phone poses before we can ever begin to actually deal with it or put safeguards in place.
What are some of the things that you've seen, kind of those, the dangers that you have seen come from these phones in school with students?
Yeah, well, the biggest one, of course, is pornography. I say the biggest, but that's probably the most prevalent. The access to pornography from early ages. We're seeing kids in 11, 12 years old. A very high percentage of these kids have been exposed to pornography. And when I say a high percentage, I'm talking in the 70, 80% of kids that age group have been exposed in some way to pornography. So that's huge. That obviously changes the way that the mind works. The access to that. But then also
now, is this back to boys and girls?
Obviously boys are more, but one thing that has been concerning is that the female viewing of pornography is definitely on the rise. Females are more likely to send nude pictures than males. So it's not just a male problem. Obviously this is a male struggle and has been throughout time probably, but it definitely is not just, you can't think, well, I have a daughter, I don't have to worry, because it's definitely a real threat for boys and girls. The pornography, and then that leads right into the sexting, which is become so incredibly common, it's almost hard for me to believe how many kids admit to either sending or receiving nude photos. And the commonality is, of all these cases, so if 80% of kids admit to either sending or receiving nude photos, and 50% of parents say, well, my kid would never do that, well, there's a disconnect there somewhere, right? The majority of those parents obviously are wrong. And it's the failure to recognize that that I think gets people into real trouble. And I've had to break a lot of parents' hearts by showing them on the phone, yeah, your kid would do this, and it's not, and that's another thing I think that we have to get out of our mind, is this idea that my kid's a good kid, he wouldn't do that. And what I want to tell parents is, your kid is a good kid, and he would absolutely do that, or she, because he's human. And so you can't assume that because you have a great kid, you may have a kid who wants to please you, but the impulse control, the ability to resist temptation just isn't there yet. So obviously on the nudity and porn side, there's that. On the flip side, on social media, it's the ability to do the cyberbullying, to say things that they feel like they have some anonymity or some protection. They'll say things online or on, Snapchat that they would never dream of saying face to face. And so it's that, obviously the social media aspect of it is dangerous in that it gives kids so much freedom to pick on other kids or put other kids on blast or do whatever. And that causes real problems, socially. It causes a lot of problems that school administrators have to deal with. And so that's a big concern that parents should have. I think most kids are on social media well before they should be on social media.
Yeah, we saw, I told the church this earlier, but we saw when we had youth camp, we had 250 students at our youth camp 2 weeks ago, and I asked them a question. The question was, how many of you struggle with depression? And 95% of them, if not more, raised their hand and said, I do.
That's representative of, if you can look at stats from the and nothing against Apple. I have an Apple iPhone. It's a great tool, but you can look at from the introduction of the Apple iPhone and link that to teen depression rates, and they correlate, very nicely. That, and we just know for a fact, and it's true with adults. It tends to cause comparisons. You're looking at everybody else's life. Oh, everything is perfect. Look at these amazing vacations, or look how many friends they have. And with kids, you take that to the next step of a kid going, oh man, so-and-so had a party. I wasn't invited, And I think one thing that is dangerous that we may not realize is, when you and I were kids, our school day ended at 3 o'clock. And we went home and we watched after-school specials. We did our homework. We ate a snack. We talked to mom or dad. Maybe we talked to a friend on the phone. But our kids' school day does not end at 3 o'clock. It keeps right on going, 24/7. All the social stuff, all the drama, all the talking. It just keeps going 24 hours a day. And they get to a point where they need that. If they feel disconnected, like you can watch a kid, you take his phone away, the anxiety level goes through the roof because what am I missing? Yeah. What's happened that I don't know about or and so they get where they feel like they need that constant connection, and breaking that can be real difficult.
Yeah, no, we've seen it in the conversations we've had with parents and different things like that, in that twofold of, one, just that acceptance and depression of, hey, I'm going to post this, how many people are going to like it, how many people are going to respond, and they're constantly checking it. How many people, and then what's going on that I've been left out of. And then, hey, if I put my phone down for a little bit, you watch families when they go to restaurants, everybody in the family is looking at their phone instead of having a conversation. I walked into a room full of girls when we were at camp, and or when we got back from camp, and every girl was sitting on their phone. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And they were like, well, we're talking to each other. And I was like, you realize you don't have to talk through your phone. Like, you're all in the same room and together.
That's one of the saddest things I noticed at the school. During my tenure at the school, there were periods where the school allowed cell phones, and there were periods where the school did not allow cell phones. And I will just tell you, and I'm not second-guessing this, school has to make decisions for a variety of reasons. But during those times when the phones were not allowed, the kids interacted. They sat at the lunch table and talked. When the cell phones are allowed, you see a lot more of, you'll have 8 kids at a round table and every one of them is looking at their phone. And so that's not what we were designed for. We're designed to be in fellowship. We're designed to talk to each other. If you consider that nonverbal communication is such a huge part of how we talk, and you take all of that out, it's leaving something to be desired, And so that part of their brain, that part of their social interaction, never develops. And so we're seeing kids now that are much more uncomfortable in social settings, because their entire social interaction revolves around digital stuff. And so when all of a sudden those kids have to go into a social setting, it causes a great deal of anxiety and things like that.
What a lot of parents begin to think in this moment is this, yeah, I understand that, but that's not my kid.
Oh, yeah.
What is the percentage of kids at school that you would say struggle with one of those 3 things that we've talked about? And so either an issue where things are being sent and done that shouldn't be sent and done, they're being bullied, or they're bullying somebody, or they're just, it's causing that anxiety and depression of acceptance and everything.
I would say, and this is just, this isn't scientific.
Right.
This is just
this
is my personal experience. And I would say that if they have a phone, almost 100%. They're struggling with one of those things. They're going to be if they have a phone, particularly an unmonitored phone, they're struggling with pornography. They're struggling with social media, if not even their own cell phone, the knowledge of what's going on in the world around them, and then the actual addiction. As adults, we all struggle with that too. Like you said at the restaurant, I mean, it's not just to kids, but if you consider, I tell parents that anything that they do, their teenager does in excess. So if you're struggling with your phone, if we're being honest with ourselves, your teenager's struggling excessively more than you are. And so, and like you said, I get what you're saying, but that's not my kid. That is if they take one thing away from this conversation, that is the biggest mistake you can make. My kid wouldn't do it, not my kid. I feel like as a parent, my job is to build walls between my child and things that want to hurt my child. And as my child grows and matures, we gradually tear those walls down as they can handle it. And that's not saying that it's a problem with my kid. It's a problem with the world, and I got to keep that stuff away until he's ready for it.
And I think that's where some parents want to go, is that I can see the pornography issue may be a big deal. I can see bullying as a big deal. But, just spending time in social media and, all that stuff, it's not that big of a deal. I don't need to make that big of a deal out. What in your years have you seen how that's impacting and changing students by letting this go and not making it a bigger deal than it really is?
Yeah, well, I think if you haven't watched the series The Social Dilemma, that's one that you should definitely watch. But you got to keep in mind these formats, these social media formats, were specifically designed to be addictive. That's how they're profitable, right? And so when the kid gets that when the kid gets that share, that's activating dopamine receptors in the brain. It works very similar to the way heroin works. And it is extremely addictive. And so obviously you see kids that are, like you said, they need that. Like they need that they need that thing. And then obviously you see, so-and-so said this about you. Or, think about it. It's one thing if I post something and somebody likes it, I think, man, that's really cool, right? If someone else posted something about me, if I'm 15 years old and somebody said, man, Philip's hair was trash today, and then somebody likes that, man, what does that do to me as a 15-year-old, right? So it's even amplified more on the negative stuff. That ability to spread that stuff like wildfire, that's dangerous. And as parents, we have to really consider that. I think what you have to ask yourself is, what does the benefit of the social media outweigh the risk?
And so, man, I really appreciate you coming by, doing this today. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Some of you are sitting out here and you're wondering, do I really have an issue? Does my family have an issue? Do my kids have an issue? Here's the test. Go home today without any reason, take the phone away and say, I'm keeping it for 2 weeks. See what happens. Yeah. I had some students sitting on the front row in the first service. They all started convulsing and twitching and shaking and scratching. And they're like, no, why? No. And so here's the thing that we have to understand as parents that, I think it's really hard for us to understand. We don't fully understand this. And so because we don't fully understand it, we give it a pass and we don't put the necessary precautions around it. It's not that big of a deal. This conversation actually lasts a whole nother 15 minutes. It's 30 minutes long. I would encourage you, we're going to be posting it this afternoon. I would encourage you to go watch this entire conversation and see everything that we talked about from different apps that students are using and how they're hiding different things in their phone. And so there's apps out there that let your students hide some of the things that they're doing and going through so that you just think, oh, that's system preferences. No, it's not. And so you've got to be aware of this. And so here's the thing. Ignorance is not an excuse for not leading and training your kids the right way. It's not an excuse. Just because you don't know does not mean it's okay. I learned that the hard way when I was driving. I was driving down the road and I was speeding. I got pulled over and the cop comes up and I said, "Officer, man, I'm so sorry. I really didn't know." And he said, "Ignorance of the law is no excuse of the law. Here's your ticket." I'm like, that hurts. And here's the thing, for you also, when you get to heaven and you stand before our Father, you stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he looks at you and he says, "I put them in your care." Ignorance is not an excuse to not lead them the right direction and do what you're supposed to do as a parent. We can't just put our heads in the sand anymore. There is an enemy out there who is after you, and they're after your kids. And some of the reasons and some of the ways that they're chasing after your kids is through the phone and through the apps. You don't even realize it. You don't realize what's being said. You don't realize what they're seeing. You don't realize what's happening. You don't realize what people are saying. You don't realize what people are saying about them. You don't realize the pain and the hurt. When we were at camp, I said, how many of you are struggling with depression, anxiety, fear? 250 students, and I did not see a single hand down. Blew me away. As a young teenage kid, that's not what I struggled with. And most adults today, when I talk to them, they say, "Yeah, I didn't really struggle with that." The difference that has changed is this. And what they're facing and what they're going through and what they're handling now. Everything. Name something. It's at the fingertips. Name something they want to see. It's right at their fingertips. Name something they want to learn. It's right at their fingertips. Name a conversation they want to have with somebody across the world. This morning I got a message from Pastor Odai, from Bishop. And he sent me a message. He's in Africa. He's in the middle of the bush in Africa, and me and him are communicating. This thing has greater power than you and I can possibly fathom or even imagine. And here's the thing. We can't be ignorant about it anymore as parents. We have to begin to protect our kids. And here's the thing. Some of you are sitting here and you're saying this, the fight is not worth it. They're going to lose their mind. It's going to be hard. The home's going to be a mess. Here's the thing. I would rather them be angry at me and protected than have the freedom that they have and be attacked by the enemy and their minds and their soul and their heart be robbed from what God wants to do and how God wants to use them. I'm not going to allow the enemy to win in my home. I'm not going to allow the enemy to win in my life, in my family's life. I'm going to protect them from what they don't even understand is evil, from what they don't even understand is a problem. I'm going to make sure that God wins in my home, and that means I have to become wise in an area that I may not be wise in right now. This isn't what I'm used to. I mean, I had the old Nokia phone. And actually, that one I was paying for. You remember those cards you could get at Walmart? You could buy time cards. I only had a limited amount of time to talk to. So I'd call my girlfriend. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm headed over to your house right now. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. And then, okay. All right, bye." And hang up because I only wanted to use 1 minute. I couldn't afford a lot. Remember that? Some of y'all were rich kids. I wasn't a rich kid. Y'all had the car phone, the Zach Morris car phone and all that stuff. Yeah, I didn't have that, man. I was paying for it minute by minute, and it was expensive. It was like $3 a minute. But now here's the thing. Your kids, we just hand it to them. Hey, I don't want to entertain you anymore. I need the house quiet here. Hey, we're going to a restaurant. Here, take this. Hey, get in the car. Here's this. Hey, go up to your room here. Hey, I need the house. It's been kind of crazy and chaotic, so here, take this. Sit in front of the TV. Grab the iPad. Grab the phone. Just sit and play on it and do this. Man, listen, he said it best when he said this. They are not idiots when they create these phones and these apps. The purpose of the phone and the app is to be addictive. How many of you get that phantom vibration in your pocket? Walking around, yeah. Walking around, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I think I got something." Nope. But I guess I better go ahead and check. What's going on in people's lives? What's somebody posting right now? I just need to know. Here's the thing. When you watch this series, Social Dilemma, it talks about, it says that they will send you phantom notifications just to get you back on the site. They'll just send you a notification. All of a sudden, they'll realize their algorithm says you've been off for so long, so I need to pull you back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a notification so that then all of a sudden you get sucked back in. They're not fools, but we as parents are. Here's what Scripture says. Look at this. Proverbs 1:5 says this, let the wise hear and increase in learning. Let the wise hear. Okay, now we've got information. Today is a different message. It's information, but now we have to take this information and we have to say, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to continue to just do what we've done in the past? Or am I going to continue to fight? Or am I going to start fighting a battle for my kids and for the future of my kids? That maybe it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Because here's the thing. I promise you, taking a phone away or putting restrictions on the phone is not going to be the norm when they walk through the doors of school next week. It's not. Most parents and most kids, when they walk through the door next week, they're going to have access to anything and everything that they want. But here's the thing. My goal for my kids is not to make them popular. My goal for my kids is to make them holy. I'm not trying to get them to have a bunch of friends just to have friends and to compromise their character. My goal is to say, I want you to be more like Jesus, not like the world. And if the world has it, then I need to take a step back and I need to look at it and I need to say, hey, do my kids really need to have this? Because I don't think some of the people who are creating this are truly on their knees, falling on their face, and they're saying, God, what do you want us to do? How can we teach and train kids? How can we help people to fall in love with Jesus more? It's not their responsibility, it's mine as a parent. And so today what we've got to do is we've got to open our eyes and we've got to realize, is this a problem? Maybe some of you grandparents, you're sitting here and you're like, I don't even understand that. My phone is hooked to the kitchen wall and it's got a really long cord and I can walk anywhere in the house that I want. Or maybe when we call you, you still have an answering machine. And you've had the same tape for 25 years. But it works. But here's the thing. Just because you don't know right now doesn't make it okay for us to just put our heads in the sand. Maybe it's time we begin learning and begin protecting. Because your kids are in a battle. As they go back to school, listen, their home life, your home life is not like my home life. The home life you have for your kids is not like the home life that I have for my kids. The home life that some of the kids at school, they're not going to be like mine. But here's the thing. My goal is not to send them to school and everybody go, oh, yay, they're the best and most popular and beautiful and wonderful and they always have the right clothes and everything. It's so neat. Man, I want them to walk down the halls and people to say there's something different. Last week when we had our guest speaker in here, he speaks all over. Dan speaks all over the world, from East Coast to West Coast. Every Sunday he's in a different church. And after he got done, we were sitting there and he said, listen, he said, there's something different about this place. He goes, it's hard to put into words. He goes, but I'm just telling you. This is not normal what's going on. He said, what's happening in that room? He said, your worship team, he said, they are phenomenal. He goes, not because of how good they are, but you can just see their hearts. See, you want to know what my prayer is for my kids? That the same thing that people see in this church is what they see in my kids. There's something different about them. There's something special. There's a glow, there's a light. But you and I have to understand and realize there's an enemy that hates your kids and does not want your kids to fall in love with Jesus and follow him. And so it's going to do everything that it can to distract them and destroy them. You have to protect them. Will you pray with me?